I first crossed paths with my ex-wife during my high school years, where she served as a teacher. Years later, I found myself speaking at a commencement ceremony, sharing insights from my career as an orthodontist. Back then, the notion of a prenuptial agreement never crossed my mind, but fortunately, it wasn't needed, sparing me from potential financial turmoil. Over time, I've heard numerous tales of men losing their wealth, a fate I managed to avoid, although I'm far from being a billionaire. My income has always exceeded my ex-wife's, a gap that widened further when she lost her job. At the age of 32, just beginning my practice, I found my ex-wife's allure irresistible. Despite maintaining a professional demeanor, the underlying attraction between us was palpable, especially during the commencement preparations. Despite her subtle flirtations, I remained reserved, until she made the bold move of suggesting we go out for dinner. Our first date left a lasting impression on me, as she insisted on footing the bill, a gesture that both surprised and intrigued me, as I was not accustomed to such independence from my dates. As she spoke those words, declaring it her pleasure, I was completely taken aback, a whirlwind of shock and amazement engulfing me. From that moment, our relationship blossomed into something exclusive and deeply special, weaving together countless wonderful experiences and unforgettable memories. However, the fabric of our 2-decade-long marriage began to unravel under the weight of a shocking revelation. We had built a family with 3 daughters, aged 24, 22, and 20, and it was during this tumultuous period that the need for paternity tests arose. Despite the uncertainty, my resolve was unwavering. Irrespective of the biological results, I was determined to remain their father, having nurtured and loved them throughout their lives. The fallout from this ordeal was profound. My daughters, now disillusioned, harbored intense feelings of resentment towards their mother, whose actions they saw as the catalyst for the disintegration of our family. The eldest and middle daughters, in particular, expressed an unyielding disdain, convinced they could never forgive her for the havoc wreaked upon our lives. Yet, I held on to a sliver of hope, especially for the youngest, that reconciliation might one day be possible. I firmly believed it was not my place to influence their decisions regarding their mother, despite the pain she caused me and the family. They were entitled to process their emotions in their own time, and I respected that, unwilling to sway their feelings or perceptions. The roots of our marital strain could perhaps be traced back to a peculiar conversation in 2005. One night, as we lay in bed, my wife, with a hint of laughter in her voice, posed a curious question about the concept of an open marriage. It was an inquiry that caught me off guard, prompting me to question her motives. She quickly assured me that it was mere curiosity, not a reflection of her desires. This moment, seemingly innocuous at the time, now lingered in my mind, a haunting prelude to the unraveling of our shared life and the familial turmoil that followed. When I firmly responded with a resounding, "Absolutely not," to the notion of an open marriage, little did I realize the depth of what lay ahead. Reflecting on this now, after having stumbled upon countless similar stories online, the eerie parallels to my own life are both striking and somewhat unnerving. The way these narratives often begin with seemingly innocent inquiries about open relationships, only to reveal hidden intentions, strikes me as almost comical now. As time passed, my wife revisited the topic, prompting me to counter with a question about divorce. Her immediate retreat from the conversation led me to believe I had effectively quashed the matter. However, I was naively mistaken. In hindsight, her persistence in raising the subject of an open marriage was a glaring red flag, possibly indicating her infidelity. At that time, I had no concrete evidence of her cheating, but I harbored a strong suspicion that her desires were wandering. Fast forwarding to the pandemic era, the veil was finally lifted, revealing the unsettling truth. It was then that I discovered my wife's long-standing affair with a coworker, a fellow teacher who was also married. Their secret relationship had spanned an astonishing 12 years, completely unbeknownst to me. During this period, my wife had even terminated a pregnancy, certain that the child was his, given that our own intimate life had dwindled to nothing. This revelation serves as a harsh lesson about the consequences of a lack of intimacy in a marriage. Despite these revelations, I remained faithful throughout our marriage. My love for my wife and family was unwavering, and the thought of jeopardizing what we had was unimaginable to me. Reading about infidelity, be it from husbands or wives, never ceases to resonate deeply with me, serving as a poignant reminder of the complexities and challenges that marriages often face. Musing over my unique disposition, I often thought, maybe I'm just inherently different. Throughout my life, I had immersed myself in my work and family, a commitment that intensified when I started my own family. Regardless of who crossed my path, be it a strikingly beautiful woman or a colleague, my focus never wavered. I viewed them solely in a professional light, single or otherwise, out of respect for my wife and the family we built together. Those vows I took were sacred to me, a stark contrast to my wife's perspective, it seemed. The pandemic era was undoubtedly challenging. In my orthodontic practice, while there was a noticeable decrease in patient flow, we managed to maintain stability. The uncertainty of the global situation was unnerving. The world was in a state of flux, leaving everyone wondering about the future. My wife, a teacher, adapted to the changing landscape, alternating between teaching from home and in the classroom. Some students attended in person while others joined virtually, creating a dynamic yet challenging environment. It was during her tenure of remote teaching in the summer school that I stumbled upon the heart-wrenching truth of her infidelity. Returning home for lunch, a routine I occasionally indulged in, I was greeted by the sound of her laughter emanating from our downstairs office. Assuming it was related to her class, I was taken aback when I overheard her say, "You've always made me smile, but what would I do without you?" Her words, clear and unmistakable, resonated through the open office doors, unbeknownst to her that I was home. The realization hit me hard, a moment etched in my memory, marking the beginning of an unexpected and tumultuous chapter in our lives. Stealthily, I edged closer to the doorway, my ears tuned to the conversation unfolding inside. The sound of a man's voice mingled with my wife's giggles and flirtatious laughter. She quipped, "You're going to have to get your wife under control." A remark that left me bewildered and curious. I continued to eavesdrop as she confessed her love for me but lamented her unmet needs, adding, "What he doesn't know won't hurt him." That statement was the tipping point for me. I strode into the room, confronting her. Startled, she spun around, abruptly ending the call. I demanded to know who she was speaking with. Initially, she claimed it was just a friend, visibly startled and scared. Pressed further, she admitted it was a coworker, insisting they were merely discussing work for a class. I wasn't convinced and asked her again, this time more sternly. She sighed, her silence hanging heavy in the air. As I approached, tears welled up in her eyes. When asked why she was crying, her response was a choked, "I'm so sorry." I recounted what I had overheard, pressing for the truth about her affair. Her pleas, "Honey, please, please," did little to temper my demand for answers. Her gesture, hands thrust forward as if to ward off the inevitable, was followed by a deep breath. Reluctantly, she revealed his name, Ken. He was familiar to me, an algebra teacher at their high school. Through tears, she confessed their ongoing affair, expressing remorse and a desire to end it, but feeling trapped by Ken's love and his intention to leave his wife for her. She portrayed herself as a victim of circumstance, implying that her infidelity was not entirely her fault. This revelation, a blend of confession and justification, left me grappling with a complex mix of emotions and the harsh reality of betrayal within our marriage. Approaching her, I stood over her as she sat, making it clear that she should hope my daughters were indeed mine and that divorce was imminent, with her being the one to leave. She attempted to speak, but I swiftly departed, heading straight to find a lawyer. It didn't take long to secure an excellent attorney, one worth every penny. I informed my lawyer of my intent to DNA test my children, emphasizing that if any of them were not biologically mine, I would pursue legal action against the father and my wife would receive nothing from me. I was adamant that she would not get a single dime, even if all the children proved to be mine. My youngest was nearing 18 at the time, and while I was prepared to provide financial support if necessary, I made it clear to my lawyer that my wife would receive no part of my assets, including the house. He ensured this was communicated unequivocally. We engaged a private investigator recommended by my lawyer, who emphasized the need for evidence of my wife's infidelity. He probed into my background, questioning whether I had ever been unfaithful, abusive, or involved in legal issues. It became apparent he was ensuring there were no grounds to question my integrity. After granting permission for the investigator to search our home's computers and belongings, He uncovered incriminating evidence, including emails, secret credit cards, and phone records, revealing my wife's long-standing affair with the man she met at the high school in 2009. My wife was pregnant with his child, and he had emailed documents indicating an appointment to terminate the pregnancy. It was surreal to realize I had been sleeping next to someone who was deceiving me every night, exchanging kisses and declarations of love. How could she carry on such an affair as if it meant nothing? After my wife moved out to stay with her family, all three of my daughters were initially upset with me. Their mother had fed them a distorted version of events, alleging that I had been mentally abusing her for years. She claimed she endured it to ensure they didn't lose their father and intended to file for divorce once they were grown and out of the house. She painted her co-worker as merely a friend, denying any physical involvement. When they returned home to confront me, led by my eldest daughter, a successful personal trainer known for her toughness, she immediately confronted me. She demanded to know how I could abuse their mother and what was wrong with me. I vehemently denied the accusations, prompting my youngest daughter to tearfully reveal that they had spoken to their mother, who asserted I had been abusing her for years. My wife was pregnant with his child, and he had emailed documents indicating an appointment to terminate the pregnancy. It was surreal to realize I had been sleeping next to someone who was deceiving me every night, exchanging kisses and declarations of love. How could she carry on such an affair as if it meant nothing? After my wife moved out to stay with her family, all three of my daughters were initially upset with me. Their mother had fed them a distorted version of events, alleging that I had been mentally abusing her for years. She claimed she endured it to ensure they didn't lose their father and intended to file for divorce once they were grown and out of the house. She painted her co-worker as merely a friend, denying any physical involvement. When they returned home to confront me, led by my eldest daughter, a successful personal trainer known for her toughness, she immediately confronted me. She demanded to know how I could abuse their mother and what was wrong with me. I vehemently denied the accusations, prompting my youngest daughter to tearfully reveal that they had spoken to their mother, who asserted I had been abusing her for years. I filed for divorce in April 2020, but it wasn't finalized until this past July, 3 whole years later. The pandemic significantly slowed down the process as she was unwilling to divorce and delayed it a couple of times. We had disagreements over settlement terms, and I ended up buying her out of the home. There was no alimony or child support. She got nothing from me except for the buyout. All three of my girls defended me when she tried to portray me as an abusive husband. I couldn't believe she stooped that low. I can't recall a single instance where I yelled at her. In June 2021, I learned that my ex-wife was terminated along with Ken. Interestingly, around the same time, I started receiving a bunch of random negative reviews from my office, but those have been resolved. She found another position in a different district, but I'm not sure about Ken. I do know that his wife decided not to divorce him, which is none of my business. Every penny spent on the divorce was worth it. I'm grateful for my children. They absolutely despise their mother, refusing to see her during holidays. My ex-wife is deeply depressed about it and sees a therapist who tried to convince her to bring our daughters into a session, but they all refused. My youngest briefly considered it, but the other two talked her out of it. I'm sure my youngest will be the first to reconcile with her mother, perhaps already doing so behind everyone's back. She's definitely a mama's girl. Young men, learn from my story. Don't ignore your wife's requests for an open marriage. She's telling you she's done with you. I'll probably never know if she cheated on me before that night she brought up the open marriage discussion, but I do know about the 12-year affair, and that was more than enough to end my marriage. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Until next time, take care.